So we have an update when it comes to Trey Miguel. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of discussion over the last few days about the future destination of the former Impact Wrestling star after his teammates in the Rascals signed with WWE. They're currently at the Performance Center, likely to debut with NXT very soon. But obviously, everyone was talking about Trey Miguel because he was the noticeable absence from that announcement of the latest recruits to the Performance Center. Now it's come out that possibly Trey Miguel could be considering offers from both WWE and AEW. Now, as I mentioned, WWE announced their latest Performance Center recruitment class this past week. The class was headlined by Dezmond, Xavier and Zachary Wentz of the Rascals, former Impact Wrestling stars. Many fans, though, were surprised and were talking about Trey Miguel not being a member of this class. Now, the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter has reported that Trey Miguel is currently considering offers from both AEW and WWE. Quite simply, at the moment, he hasn't decided where to sign. Trey Miguel, Dezmond Xavier, Zachary Wentz of the Rascals made their last appearance for Impact Wrestling last month on the November 17th episode of Impact on Access TV. Now, it was reported previously that the company and the trio could not come to an agreement as a new contract, therefore the three stars left Impact Wrestling. But the Wrestling Observer report also stated that WWE is still interested in signing Trey Miguel so he can join the rest of the Rascals in NXT. Time will tell, though, if Miguel eventually does sign with WWE, he could ultimately choose to head to AEW instead. Now, when it comes to Dez and Wentz, it's unsure and not yet known if AEW actually did offer deals to both Dez and Wentz. Both men obviously ended up signing with WWE. If Trey Miguel joins Dez and Wentz at the Performance Center, they will likely start their career in NXT. But if he signs with AEW, he could play a crucial role in the potential partnership with Impact Wrestling and AEW. So obviously, Trey Miguel now has a bit of a dilemma on his hand and an important decision about his future. Where does he sign, WWE or AEW? Now, it's also worth mentioning that Trey Miguel is only 26 years of age, so this is a big turning point in his career, big crossroads. Only time will tell which company he wants to go to. Now, when I spoke about the Rascals signing with WWE, we did a video on this a couple of days ago. I spoke about this being one of the scenarios when it comes to Trey Miguel, about what I thought could be the situation with him right now. Obviously, there was various scenarios that we could guess was the situation. One of them was that he just hasn't signed. He wasn't announced as part of this latest Performance Center recruits announcement because he just hasn't signed a deal with the WWE yet. He has big options available to him, and he's considering all of them. And look, the money is good, I think, in either deal here. It's better than Impact Wrestling, so I'm not too sure, quite frankly, if this is a money issue. Obviously, the reason he is weighing this up as well, and they decided to leave Impact, all three of the Rascals, quite frankly, is that we're going to be working more dates in this new contract, regardless of where they sign, and the money will be better than what they were on in Impact. And it does go to confirm the previous report that was out there that essentially the Rascals had a standing offer from WWE. That's why Dez and Wentz signed with WWE, because essentially they were told, you know what, whenever your Impact Wrestling contract expires, there's a deal waiting for you here with WWE, and it looks like it's the same when it comes to Trey Miguel. So Trey Miguel has that same standing offer that the other two members of the Rascals had. Now, for me, Trey Miguel, he's the biggest star out of all three of them, and I think this was the big confusing element when the Rascals were, or at least two of them, Dez and Wentz, were announced to have signed with WWE and reported to Performance Center. It was slightly confusing because a lot of people, myself included, thought as a promotion, you want the trio. You want the whole package. You want all three of them. They come together. They work best when they're together. Now, that isn't to say, as I mentioned before, it's not to say that Trey Miguel without Dez and Wentz is completely worthless, or Dez and Wentz without Trey Miguel are worthless as well. I don't think it works like that. I think even as just Trey Miguel, say if Trey Miguel was just in AEW and Dez and Wentz were in WWE as a tag team, they are very, very valuable, and they are, all of them, all three of them, are huge talents, young talents with huge potential and a huge upside, and they can make a lot of money for whichever promotion they decide to sign with. But it just doesn't feel right to not have them all together as a faction, not to have them all together as a trio. Is that because that's what we're used to, or is that just because what works? I think a bit of both. I think everyone loved the package of them all together in Impact Wrestling. The chemistry, obviously, they have there. They're real-life friends. They're real-life traveling buddies. They have that chemistry inside the ring, outside of the ring. They have it on the microphone. They have it in backstage segments, whether it's in their treehouse or doing stuff backstage with the world champion Rich Swann. They have that charisma, and they play off each other very, very well. I did talk about this before as well, and I still do stick by it. Their last appearance on Impact Wrestling in November, that ending, obviously they had the match, was it Rich Swann and Trey Miguel versus Dezmond and Wentz. That match, at the end of it, once the action was over and the bell had rang, all three members of the Rascals were incredibly emotional. They were full-blown tears. They were very emotional that they were leaving Impact Wrestling. A lot of discussion at the time was, obviously, they're very emotional because this was the first real company to take a chance on them. They felt like they had really developed and grown as talents and as people during their time in Impact Wrestling. They really liked the environment. They really liked the backstage crew. They really liked the other wrestlers on the roster. This was tough to see this journey with Impact Wrestling ending. But now you kind of look at it with a bit of hindsight and a bit of looking at it from different perspectives here. And you kind of think, well, were they emotional because they were leaving Impact? Or were they just emotional because this was a bit of a curtain call for the Rascals in the same way of the Clique back in the 1990s when it comes to their splitting off into different directions? Was that why this was so emotional? Because you could have had a situation where Trey Miguel knows he's going to AEW and Dez and Wentz know they're going to WWE, and then they're splitting off. They know that actually this might be the last time we all are in the same ring as each other. This might be the last time we ever compete in a match against each other or with each other. This might be the last time we're ever in the same promotion together. It would explain why they were that emotional. It would explain why they were really emotional, because they might not know that this could be the end of a journey, not just in Impact, but as a faction. So it would certainly explain a few things when it comes to that emotional ending. But let's look at Trey Miguel. Let's look at the options available to him right now of WWE and AEW. First, let's look at WWE. What does that offer for Trey Miguel going forward in his career? Well, obviously, it's still WWE and it offers a lot of things. You've got the money, obviously. WWE is going to offer him a good deal. Maybe not as good as AEW, but they're going to offer him a good deal. Certainly more money than he was on in Impact Wrestling. Now, it's not all about money, but JR once said it's about cash and creative, the two C's, and it does play a factor, regardless of whatever you think, it does play a factor. Obviously, as well, when it comes to signing with WWE, it's the dream, right? It's the dream. It's the company most people grew up watching. It's the company. Now, we kind of got past the generation of the people coming into the business now probably didn't grow up with a second company, really. Obviously, they might have grown up with TNA and TNA Impact. It depends on what time they were growing up, about how big the company was or wasn't at that period of time. Nevertheless, we're growing up now, the generation of wrestler that's coming in only really knows WWE as the big North American company, right? As the number one company. So WWE is the dream. It's the dream of appearing on Monday Night Raw. It's the dream of appearing on SmackDown. It's the dream of appearing at WrestleMania, having that WrestleMania moment, appearing in the Royal Rumble, in a Royal Rumble match, appearing at SummerSlam, having a match at Survivor Series in a Survivor Series traditional elimination match. Those big dreams, that's what WWE would always have, that big lure of, if you come to WWE, if you sign to WWE, you could wrestle at WrestleMania one day in a stadium full of people, and you can be on a famous WrestleMania card. Think of all those WrestleMania moments with Hogan and Andre, or The Rock and Steve Austin, or The Rock and Hulk Hogan, or John Cena and The Rock, or The Undertaker's undefeated streak. You could be on a WrestleMania card just like that. That WrestleMania card, that is, if you get in pro wrestling, for most people, that is the dream, to one day end up in WWE. Now, not for everyone. Speak to Darby Allin. He'll tell you that he had no desire or dreams or anything like that of appearing inside of a WWE ring, but most people do. On top of that, if you're a young talent like Trey Miguel, who's 26 years old, you have that opportunity to go to the Performance Center, go to NXT, and learn under the learning tree of two of the biggest stars of all time, two of the most knowledgeable stars of all time in Triple H and Shawn Michaels. We know Shawn Michaels is a coach there, and he's like the head, not the head trainer, but he's certainly the guy that, I think his class is, they call it the advanced class, the getting people ready for the main roster class. Plus Triple H runs NXT. Shawn Michaels is a big prominent figure there as well. So if you go and sign with WWE, if you go to the Performance Center, if you go to NXT, you're going to learn under them. That's a massive draw as well. And NXT has a lot to offer. It does have exposure. It doesn't get as much ratings on the USA Network as AEW does on TNT. Nevertheless, the lore of WWE is still there. And it still is something that you have to consider. And the facilities of the WWE Performance Center, just being in the system, it's a dream for most people. Plus, you obviously have the opportunity to eventually work on Monday Night Raw, on Friday Night SmackDown. Once you're on the main roster, make really big money if you make it big. Obviously, you can then compete in front of millions of people on the USA Network and on Fox, work big stadium events around the world when it's safe to do so. The law is there to work for WWE. It always will be there. And if you're Trey Miguel, I think if he signs with WWE, I think he would have huge success in NXT. He is tailor-made for that brand. He is NXT personified. He would do so well in NXT. On Raw and SmackDown, though, I don't see it. That is my issue with Trey Miguel signing with WWE. That is my biggest concern with him signing with WWE, is I think he would fit the pattern to a T of the person that has huge success in NXT, but then just fails miserably on Raw or SmackDown. Trey Miguel, to me, he is the prototype. He is the prototype, stereotypical pro wrestler in 2020 that would thrive on the black and gold brand and then fail miserably in WWE on Raw or SmackDown. Now, I know that sounds harsh, and I know that people will say, well, that's not true, you don't know that. For me, that is accurate. For me, that is totally accurate. And now, that's not to say that he would maybe totally fail on Raw or SmackDown, but the odds already are against him, and he hasn't even signed yet. To me, I look at Trey Miguel, and I just see Ricochet all over again. Now, they are slightly different, but what I mean by that is, I mean hugely talented in the ring, young, huge upside, he's cool, you know, he's got a great look, he has the appeal of both the males and the females and everyone in between, he's marketable, he has big star ability and he can be a big star potentially, he has a huge upside, he's young, but what's the issue when it comes to WWE? He's a smaller guy. Now, I think his promo ability, if I was going to compare him to Ricochet, I think his promo ability is better, quite frankly, than Ricochet. I think Ricochet's promo abilities are awful, but his promo is still not amazing, but he does have some charisma. I think that the way that Trey Miguel gets over and gets attention is from his work in the ring. It's from his work in the ring, his style in the ring, his flashy style in the ring, the high-flying moves, the power slide moves, right? He gets over from doing that, which, if you look at NXT, from an NXT point of view, that suits NXT to the ground. Because NXT is much more about the in-ring product. It's much more about the in-ring style. It's all about the matches. Sometimes that is the issue with NXT, is that you watch an episode of NXT and it just feels like it's match after match after match, with sometimes not a lot of story and not a lot of connective lines throughout the show. It's just match, 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 which works for them on the network, but not on the USA Network. Nevertheless, that is the style of NXT, and he suits the style of NXT. Whereas, should Trey Miguel sign with WWE and then go to Raw and SmackDown, that's completely different. With NXT, it's all about the in-ring product. Raw and SmackDown, it's all about the glitz and the glamour and the character and the script writing and the overproduced segments and the promos and the storylines. And just as much as I had zero faith that Vince McMahon in his 70s and Bruce Pritchard in his late 50s can accurately write and book for guys like Matt Riddle and Aleister Black and Keith Lee and Shinsuke Nakamura, which the evidence is there that they can't. Look at their success on the main roster so far. I have zero faith that the old men and their team of writers, have any idea how to book or write someone like Trey Miguel. They just don't, because they don't understand him. They won't understand him in the same way they don't and won't understand Matt Riddle, Aleister Black, Keith Lee, and Shinsuke Nakamura, and the various others that have thrived in NXT and fail on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown. He would be doomed to fail. He would be doomed to fail from the moment he stepped through the doors and succeeded in NXT. He would be doomed to fail on Raw and SmackDown. And just look at it. In 2020, Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard's track record of writing for and booking a young, relatable, cool, high-flying babyface is zero. They have a success rate of zero there, which is my concern for Trey Miguel. That is my big concern for Trey Miguel. But I suppose if you want to look at the positives here, he would be with the Rascals, strength in numbers and the total package. But they would get split up as well. I just don't... There are a lot of issues if he signs for WWE. That is my concern. So, naturally, what are the pros then on the other side of the argument? What are the pros for signing for AEW? Well, if you want to talk about money, the money would probably be better than the NXT deal. Now, this is out there. This is accurate report. It's been reported by a couple of people now. AEW contracts for the most are better than the NXT money, except for exceptional circumstances in NXT, of course. Adam Cole, maybe Tommaso Ciampa, Finn Balor, who's on main roster money. Those guys, they are on more money than your traditional NXT contract, but as a rule of thumb, the AEW contracts are better paying than NXT. Why? Because that's what Tony Khan wants. He knows it's a better draw to get people over. You're going to make more money in AEW than you are in NXT. Plus, NXT deals, traditionally, they're developmental deals. So that's the thing there. So he would make more money probably initially in AEW. Plus, if he goes to AEW, he's on the winning team in the Wednesday Night Wars. That's just a fact. I know people will talk about the ratings. Do they matter? Do they not matter? Does total viewership matter? Does the demo matter? Whatever, AEW is winning in the ratings war. That's just the case. And if he goes to AEW, he is going to the hip, cooler product in his demographic. In his demographic, that younger demographic, the people he appeals to the most, he would be going to the show that is more popular in his own demographic. That's a key thing there as well. So you have to think about that as well. Plus, if he goes to AEW, he's going to be facing off with some big names potentially. Chris Jericho, Cody Rhodes, Jon Moxley, Kenny Omega. Those names, they keep coming. So he would have a list of people that he can work with and can make him a star, and he can have great matches with. That's something there that is obviously a massive draw too. The concern would be if he goes to AEW would be, where does he fit in? Where does he fit in straight away? Because we know the roster in AEW is bloated. It's a bloated roster. They haven't released anyone through the pandemic. They've released people for other issues. Jimmy Havoc, Executive Bea Priestley. But as far on the whole, when it comes to the pandemic, Tony Khan hasn't released anyone. I don't know if he ever will for just we have nothing for you. He seems like too loyal a guy. Maybe that's going to be a fault of him in the future, that he just doesn't release people. That's a big roster anyway. Where does Trey Miguel fit in on that? And it's a bloated roster with not a lot of TV time right now. In terms of AEW's TV, in terms of that stuff that's actually on the TV, it's just 2 hours on TNT. Yes, we know about AEW Dark. That's about 14 hours long on YouTube every single week, and it's full of squash matches. In terms of their TV, they've got 2 hours on TNT right now. We know the second show is coming. There is a second show from AEW coming to TNT. We don't know when. We were told it was going to be the end of 2020. That doesn't look like it's going to be the case now, because there's only about 3 or 4 weeks left of 2020, and there has been no announcement, and there's certainly going to be no show. So that's a 2021 deal. So maybe Trey Miguel could fit in when there's a second show. I don't know. So where does Trey Miguel fit in? Does he come in as a singles? Probably, but he would end up in a faction, because everyone in AEW does fit into a faction, because that's a way of getting all these people on TV right now. I could see him go into a Team Taz or something like that. But then you have to raise the question of, if you're going to a promotion just to be in another faction, why wouldn't you go with your original faction with your friends in WWE and NXT? Plus, if you're in AEW, you're without the Rascals. You're on your own. So that's something to think about as well. Strength in numbers isn't just on screen, it's off screen as well. So these are the issues that Trey Miguel are really weighing up here. And you can see why he would be conflicted. Personally, if I had to predict it right now, it's a tough one. I would say that Trey Miguel goes to AEW. My concern would be, as I mentioned, where does he fit in? I don't think Trey Miguel in AEW is ready for the main event just yet. I don't think he's ready for a run for the World Championship or a World Championship shot in AEW just yet, because I think the standard is very high. You've got Kenny Omega as the World Champion, and Jon Moxley and Chris Jericho and MJF and Cody Rhodes. Is Trey Miguel on that level? Not yet. I think he can be, but that's going to take some time. He's only 26. I think right now he slots perfectly into the TNT Championship picture. I would like to see Trey Miguel face off against Darby Allin, against Ricky Starks, against Sammy Guevara. Cody Rhodes is in the TNT Championship picture by his own forced word. Lance Archer, Brian Cage, Powerhouse Hobbs. I think he fits in very nicely in there, especially if they want to build out that TNT Championship division. I think he would do fantastic in that role, and I think he would do fantastic in AEW as well. But nevertheless, he could still sign with WWE. As I mentioned, there are options to him when it comes to WWE and reasons why he would sign. Whether it's just being with his close friends, whether it is the money, whether it is learning from Triple H and Shawn Michaels, whether it is having success in NXT, because I think he really would. But you have to look at the future. You have to look 2-3 years down the time. Am I going to be miserable? It's something to think about. So Obviously, right now, he's assessing his options. Anything can and will happen in the world of pro wrestling, and I'm sure we'll find out in the coming days about the decision that Trey Miguel makes. But of course, as always, it's just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts? Where do you think Trey Miguel will end up, and where do you think he should end up? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, chat about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, and all that fun stuff in pro wrestling here on the channel, so be sure to leave a comment below. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button. It really does help us out here on YouTube. Go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.